Hello everyone. I desperately need to do some work in the garden today. I'm at that point where, let me know if you experience this too, but I'm kind of at that August slump where, I move most of my plants out in May. I'm really good at pruning and fertilizing and spending so much time taking care of them until about August, especially when it's over 90 degrees outside like it is right now and very humid here. And at this point, I'm like, can't you just keep yourselves alive until the fall? But they can't. So there are some things that are not looking great. So we'll do a little ugly garden tour, but most things are still doing pretty well. And then do all the cleanup that I have to do. So we're on the front deck right now. Let me show you kind of what's falling apart out here. Oh, also, I've gone for my extra large hat today for extra shade protection, but anytime I put this hat on, because it's much wider, well, maybe a couple inches wider than my normal ones, I keep running in to things like that because I'm not used to my new width. So we'll see how many times I hit my head while I'm doing the garden tasks. So let's first start over here where maybe you might notice there appears to be a blank spot, and you're gonna ask, Bethany, did you pull that tomato plant that was in that center grow bag? I did not. I came outside a few days ago and it has fallen over, and I just have kind of left it there because, tomatoes, if you don't stake them, they do grow like this with vines on the ground, but obviously most people want them growing vertically, especially in smaller spaces. But I used very thin sunflower stalks, and I think they just disintegrated in the soil, or the plant was too heavy. One of those two, maybe a combination of both. I definitely need sturdier stakes for any sort of tomatoes, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm actually gonna pull the whole plant. You might think, why pull the plant when it's still growing just fine? It's just flopped on the ground. Well, that's because, let me see if I can zoom in here. Do you see that tomato plant right there with the black spot on the bottom? That's what happens almost 100% of the time I grow the beefsteak sized tomatoes versus, for example, my cherry tomatoes, which always do great. This tomato right here, the one that's red, might be salvageable, but I don't think any of the other ones are. So I actually stopped growing beefsteak tomatoes a couple years ago just because I constantly had that issue where I wasn't getting any fruit without that blossom end rot on it, so it just really wasn't worth it, or a lot of mine will start to crack. Now, I know it can either be lack of calcium in the soil, but more often it is not consistent watering, which I do have an irrigation system up here, but maybe it's in a 30-gallon grow bag, so it's a large size container. It's getting water every day, but I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just much more difficult in containers to deal with those issues. So if you do grow beefsteak tomatoes in containers and you have good luck with them not getting that blossom end rot or splitting, let me know your tips and tricks. But I gave up a few years ago and just grew cherry tomatoes because, again, they consistently do much better for me, and I'm not wasting the space on something that's not going to do well. However, this year, when I went to get a cherry tomato plant, that beefsteak was in the wrong section. So I got a beefsteak tomato plant, and if I get a tomato plant, I could have given it away, but I had space. So I plopped it in there. I was going to see how it did, and now I'm going back to probably not growing them anymore. So first thing I'm going to do, maybe I'll just go ahead and do that now, is get that out of the grow bag, and then I will have a completely empty 30-gallon grow bag for some fall crops. Okay, so I'm just going to cut off, leaving a few inches above the stem, just because I feel like or a few inches above the dirt, because that's easier than to pull out the root ball, which I don't know if I'm going to do right now or not. I'll talk about that in a second. But let's now get this plant out of here and knocking off some cherry tomatoes at the same time. First thing is I'm going to cut the twine with scissors to get the sunflower stalks out of here. And at this point, actually, the sunflower stalks are still a pretty good length, so I'll probably save these to use in my houseplants, because my houseplants don't get watered as often as the garden does. Obviously, it's much cooler inside, so the stakes themselves don't rot as fast what's in the potting soil, so I can use these in my houseplants. So this one I'll save. This one's probably too short, so I won't. And was just one more in here. Let's see if this one easily slides out. Yeah, pretty good. And this one is also a good length. So I think I will save this. Okay, now let's see what we have as far as tomatoes. So this one, it's a little split on the top, but I mean, not terrible, but I think all of the other tomatoes in here, let's see if I can get down here. Yeah, all of the other ones, well, actually, I mean, those look good, but all of these here had that blossom end rot. Yeah, I think I just need to give up on the beefsteak tomatoes. So what I'm going to do now, because this plant seems pretty healthy despite the issues I've been having, but when I do have garden waste or plant waste that doesn't look like there's any fungal issues, no major pest infestations, this I will put into my tumbler composter. So what that means that I need to do is chop this plant up. I'm going to grab a bucket because the composter is on the back deck. So I need to take all of this through the house over to the back deck. So I need to grab a bucket and then we will get to chopping this up. Okay, I have my bucket here and then I'm just going to start chopping. And this is what I do with, I mean, really anything I'm going to put either in the composter or anything that I need to put into a garbage bag, because the smaller the pieces are, the less likely they'll be to tear a hole in the garbage bag as I carry it through the house and downstairs. So that is always my plan. And then obviously with composting, smaller pieces will break down a lot faster. I think I learned in my horticulture classes that it's usually like 1 inch to 2 inches. I probably do a little bit longer than that because I just don't feel like cutting them that small and taking the time to do that. But I mean, things still break down in there. It takes a while, but things do break down in there. So I'm pretty happy with the way I've been doing it. So I'm just going to continue chopping up the tomato plant until it is gone. Now I think the fruit, I'm probably not, like the green fruit, I'm probably not going to compost. Maybe I'll take any that don't have blossom end rot inside. But I just tend not to throw seeds into the composter, even though I think the heat is supposed to kill them of a composter as things break down. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I just try to avoid putting seeds in there that then spread throughout my garden. On the table, which by the way, I got these tablecloths over winter on Amazon and forgot about them until a few weeks ago, but I love how they just make it feel a little bit fancier in the garden. But on the table, I have the raspberries I just harvested and then the green tomatoes that didn't have any end rot on them. So I will take those all inside. Down here in the bucket, I have the tomato plant, so that will be taken over to the other deck. And then back over here, let me see how easy it might be to pull out the root ball. If it's easy right now, I will do it. So let's see. Actually, yeah, that's coming out fairly easily. So I'm going to shake that. Now this is still damp, like the soil is still damp because this has been getting watered. While I'm here, let me twist this all the way. Sorry, I need 2 hands for a second. Okay, so that is now twisted all the way to the right because there's nothing in here now that needs to be watered, so I don't want the water running into this grow bag. I also find if I pull out the root ball like that and leave it here for a couple days, the soil dries out, which makes it lighter, so that I will put it into the garbage bag to carry down, and it's much easier when it's not saturated and making it heavier. So, I think that's everything I wanted to do with the tomato plant. I washed my hair this morning for reasons unknown since, I don't know if you can tell how sweaty my head is now. I was outside for maybe 15 minutes. So luckily that was everything I needed to pull on the front deck. which is west facing. So that's where we're getting the afternoon sun. The other things I have to pull, which are zinnias on my back deck covered with powdery mildew, that is getting into the shade. So I might take a little air conditioning break, maybe read a little gardening magazine, and then I will go out there and pull the zinnias, throw the tomatoes into the composter, but this heat is not messing around. So definitely stay safe if you are out gardening in high heat. I'm gonna sit inside, drink some water, and then once the back deck is in full shade, that's when we'll head out again. Just to show you what I mean. So it's just about 4 o'clock right now, and you can see where the shade is from where the sun is going over the other side of our house. So once, because the zinnia I have to pull is back there, and then there, I think, oh yeah, one right there. So that one's actually in the shade right now. Still want to do an air conditioner break, but once they're both in the shade, I will head out here. Maybe in an hour, we should be good to go. Also, I wanted to mention my super petunias. So I get budworms every single year on my super petunias. I have in the past sprayed with, what is it, the BT Dead Bug Brew. This year, I didn't spray anything. All I did was, they were kind of at the point where they needed to be cut back anyway. So I cut them back, gave them some liquid bloom boosting fertilizer, and they're looking really good again. Now I did see some holes on this one for the budworms, but it's been much lower maintenance, and I feel like the budworms are just causing as much damage as they normally do. Actually, while we're inside waiting, let me talk a little bit about watering and how I'm doing that right now. So when we are experiencing high levels of heat, like we are right now, my irrigation still runs every morning. Now there are maybe 10% of the total containers that I have that are not set up to irrigation. So I always hand water those every morning. So I did my normal morning watering routine, but just after getting to know my pots, there are some that need an additional round of watering. Really anytime it's over like 85, and I think we're around 95 right now. So my herbs in the 8-inch terracotta pots definitely need a second round of watering, not only because it is so hot and they are smaller pots, but also because now the root balls are much larger than they were, a month, 2 months ago. So there's less soil and more roots. So the soil's drying out faster. So those always get a second round. I go out usually around like 1 o'clock. What else? Oh, not my morning glory, the black-eyed Susan vine. Both of those, the front and the back deck, always need a second round of watering. And again, the back deck, so the east facing deck, it does get the shade. Again, there's still a little bit of it right now. Let me actually look. I guess the black-eyed Susan vine there is in the sun still, so probably by 5 o'clock it's out of the sun, but usually the plants on the back deck don't need as much of a second watering just because most of the sun is the morning sun. I don't know, that's how it's been so far, but the black-eyed Susan on both decks, which is in a pretty large pot, needs a second watering. I'm trying to think of anything else. Sometimes my dahlias in grow bags do, but not every time, so I will really only water them again if I see a little bit of drooping from the dahlias, and I think that's it. My bucket planter, even though those are probably the second smallest pots that I have, because it's on the wall of the house, so that's probably in shade by noon, maybe like 12:30. That's good with one watering in the morning, and then it's getting all shade in the afternoon. Same thing with my hydrangeas. Those, they definitely struggled more when we had the 90-degree weather like early July, and they weren't quite as established. Now they were holding up much better. I don't see the crispiness that I was seeing on the flowers or the leaves that I did last time. So yeah, that's my watering routine when it's super, super hot. Typically I'm still just watering once a day, again, unless it's really like over 85 degrees. But that is what I'm doing right now. And I think we're getting down in the 70s in a couple days. Tomorrow, hopefully it comes soon. I've never been more ready for fall because I'm usually a spring summer girl, but I'm ready for fall because I'm tired of going outside and just being sweaty. All right, we are almost in full shade on the back deck. So let me show you what I'm going to pull back here. It's just, again, a couple plants. There are some more plants that also don't look very great, but I can't bring myself to get rid of yet. But let me show you what we're going to pull right now. So coming around here, as I trip over my hose, I am going to pull what I believe are the 2 remaining zinnias from my zinnia dahlia border. So these were Floret, precious metals, and I'm just really sad that they are covered in powdery mildew. I did at least get to harvest some, but I just wish they could have lasted a little bit longer. Now, I was leaving these because I thought maybe it would be a good idea to still save the seeds, but then I was reading, do not save seeds from plants with powdery mildew because they can be transferred to the seeds and then the plants you grow from them. So I'm not going to do that, but I think you can kind of tell this one was a very pinky kind of iridescent, very pretty colored zinnia. So that's definitely going. The things that don't look great but I can't bring myself to pull are the dahlias. So some of them look better than others. The flowers on my Otto's Thrill are really pretty. Actually, might need to give these a little bit of water, but if you like go down, they're looking a little worse for the wear. But I'm gonna leave the dahlias for now. If they're still flowering, I don't know. I'm gonna leave them because that's what I feel like doing in my heart. So we'll go ahead and pull these zinnias, and again, because they're covered in powdery mildew, these are not going in the composter, these are getting thrown away. So let me show you the other zinnia. Here she is. So this one was a little bit more orangey. It was a mix, precious metals mix. I didn't really love this one. I'm more of a peach fan than orange, even though I know those are very close together and you might even call this peach, but I didn't love this one as much as the pinky ones. So I wasn't planning to save any of the seeds, but doesn't matter anyway. So that's the other one that I'm going to pull. So I have my garbage bag here because all of the plant waste is going straight into this garbage bag. And I'm also going to cut off some of the pieces of the dahlia that are already falling over. Similarly, I am cutting these up into smaller pieces, not for like decomposition, composting reasons, but again, because they're less likely to tear holes in the garbage bag as I carry it through the house and down. So I'm gonna go here at the bottom and just cut that cut that zinnia right off, and we will get to chopping. It does kind of make me sad. Let's see, should I save? No, I was gonna maybe save that zinnia for a bouquet, but it's also already kind of on the way out, so we'll just do a little snip here. Now, as far as the root ball, I'm leaving that in for now because I don't plan to plant anything else in that grow bag. Nothing else is going to go in there for the rest of the season. I'm going to leave the grow bag where it's at for now because one thing about a smaller garden is not a lot of storage space. So it's not like if I moved that bag, I have somewhere else to put it. I really don't have anywhere else for it to go. So it's going to stay there along the border until I do my winter cleanup, which I think those grow bags, one, the root balls are probably so large that it's likely going to take most of the soil out with it, so I'd have to refill it anyway. Because they are smaller containers too, though, and the plants had powdery mildew, I am planning to dump the soil, or however much is left over after I remove the root ball, and just use fresh soil next year. So that is something I've been trying to read up on. As I've mentioned before, it would be virtually, not impossible, I guess it could happen if I wanted it to replace all of the soil in the elevated beds or like my 30-gallon grow bags every year, because I don't know where that much soil is going to go. We really just have the parkway and a small space out like in the front of our house where we could potentially even like put soil. It's not like we have an area to dump it. So that's not really an option, and just the whole process of getting it off of the deck. Now, smaller amounts that I can obviously like bag up and take down, that's a lot easier. So where was I going with that? Oh, so I was reading like, is it worth replacing the potting soil that powdery mildew plants grew in? And it said no, which, I mean, I feel like if you're doing everything possible to fix it, you should do it. But at the same time, it was like the powdery mildew is going to come no matter what. The spores are everywhere. The plants that were growing in fresh potting soil this year got powdery mildew just as bad, if not worse, as the ones that were in potting soil I've reused in the past. So I think my game plan is going to be kind of what I normally do anyway, just replace the potting soil in small containers completely and just refresh potting soil in larger containers with compost and perlite. So let me go grab the other zinnia and we'll finish chopping that up. Alrighty. That dahlia next to it, which I think is the Thomas Edison, is looking really sad, but we're gonna leave it for now anyway. Again, as I'm cutting, I am leaving a little bit of stem because I find it's easier to pull the root ball out that way. Maybe I'll just do a little bit of chop chop right from this angle. Now at this point, I think all of my zinnias are gone, right? Maybe I'm missing one or two, but you saw the video where I pulled the ones out front. They definitely did not last as long this year, which I think is because we got so much heat and humidity much earlier in the season than normal. I was not on top of preventative fungicide spraying. I just was not prepared to start that early. So I think that was the main problem. For next year, I still love zinnias. They make up the majority of my giveaway bouquet. So I'm still gonna grow them, but I'm gonna look for powdery mildew resistant varieties and potentially just fewer zinnias than I did this year. So I think that's everything I'm gonna grab for right now. You know what? While we are out here, one thing I wanted to ask, so let me know if you know the answer to this. This is a Penhill watermelon dahlia. It's kind of on its way out right now, but this was labeled as Penhill watermelon, and that's what that is, which is great. However, if we come over here to this dahlia, this was in the same package that said Penhill watermelon. It came with 2 dahlias, and it is definitely not. It is a very pretty yellow. It's even brighter than it's showing up on camera, and it's definitely a decorative, not dinner plate dahlia, just based on the size. I love this, but I don't know what it is. So if I ever want to find it in the future, I did do my regular like Google image search, and it either just says dahlia or gives me a bunch of options that are all different and don't really quite look like this. So if you recognize this dahlia, let me know. All right, well, I think that's gonna be everything for today. I need to go back inside and escape this heat, even though it is a little bit better out here being in the shade. It's still very hot. And even though some things look bad, at least my bucket planter still looks really good. So that's gonna be everything for this video. Coming up next, you'll probably see me pulling some more plants that aren't doing that great. We're gonna start fall planting really soon here as well, but I think tomorrow it's 90s again, then it's like high 80s, and then we hopefully drop back down to the 70s for a good chunk of time. So we'll see how the weather progresses, but that's gonna be everything. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you know what that yellow dahlia is, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.